Keanu Reeves says, you know, you need a license to go fishing, but any asshole can be a dad. And that always sticks with me when I see parents who sometimes aren't the best parents or giving their kids the best that they could. And here you are having to have a psychological evaluation before you're allowed to be a dad. That's so different from like every other parent, you know, most other parents out there. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to episode 2 of Unplanned Parent. I'm Angelica Rampal, MD, known as Dr. Angel to my patients. I'm here with my co-host and brother, Raman. As we discussed in our first episode, Raman is having a baby with longtime friend Ashley, and they are doing it in a non-traditional way, going through IVF. And it took him somewhere between 3 and 9 months to give Ashley the, yes, I'm going to do this. I will go give my sperm to the sperm bank and let's move on with this. But today we'll talk about what actually happened after Raman sent Ashley the yes text message.
So yeah, the deadline had arrived. It was the first week of January. I had not made the decision yet, but just to recap, once I did, and once I was over the 50% barrier, I hashed together the text message, sent it out, and I think that was the first legally binding text message I had ever sent. And maybe that anyone has ever sent. It took a lot out of me, and it felt good once it was sent. But yeah, as you just said, it took another 6 months or more before we could actually even get to the point of implanting an embryo. So yeah, saying yes was the very hard part, and coming to that decision was very hard, and a lot of sleepless nights. But once that was done, was a long road of tediousness and paperwork and conversations.
So the mental work was done, and the next steps were more mentally easy, but super tedious, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. It wasn't as simple as just going to a clinic, having some awkward moments, and leaving. There was a lot of other stuff. I mean, I didn't think I was going to have to go through a 3-hour-long psychological evaluation, right? Not everyone has to do that who has a kid.
So let's get into it. What happened after you said yes? What were the next steps?
So it definitely wasn't what I thought. But I believe the first decision was for me to whether I wanted to be the legal father or not be the father. And, you know, I was hoping there was like a gray area where it was like, hey, I'm just going to be like a dad when I want to be, or, you know, just to give myself an out in case I thought I ended up making a horrible choice. But in California, the way it works is you're either in or you're out. So what does that mean? If you're in, it means you assume all parental guardian rights, and you are the legal parent, and you get to make decisions regarding the welfare of the child. If you're out, what does that mean? It means, hey, things could be great. Ashley could be like, come over every day, hang out with your son. But it also could mean that one day Ashley's like, hey, I don't want you to hang out with this kid ever again. My boyfriend or husband doesn't like him, and your family can never see him again. So that, in a nutshell, is what in and out means.
So you're saying the first step wasn't that you just went to the IVF clinic and gave them a sperm sample?
No, you have to tell them first, and you have to fill out a questionnaire of what your role is going to be in the life of this child.
And how did you figure all that out? Do you and Ashley just like share a Google document and then sign it, or what happens?
Well, this part really, I don't think Ashley and I talked about much. I think I told her I was going to be in. Once I realized that California is in or out, you know, there's no way I could be out, right? So I made that decision. And then after that was done, then like a simultaneous array of things kind of started moving forward. One being me getting a lawyer, Ashley getting a lawyer. And this is all requirements by the clinic, which is requirements from the state. So we both had to get lawyers. We both had to get psychological evaluations.
Wow. So that's crazy. That just reminds me of that line in Parenthood where Keanu Reeves says, you need a license to go fishing, but any asshole can be a dad. And that always sticks with me when I see parents who sometimes aren't the best parents or giving their kids the best that they could. And here you are having to have a psychological evaluation before you're allowed to be a dad. That's so different from like every other parent, most other parents out there.
Isn't that the way everyone who has a kid should have to do it? Like anyone who's having consensual sex without a condom should have to go talk to a psychologist beforehand and be like, hey, you know what you're getting yourself into potentially?
Hey, you can bring the bill to Congress. Yeah.
I mean, is that unethical? Like, why are they making me do all that?
Yeah, super interesting. But okay, so nevertheless, you and Ashley both underwent psychological evaluations, or just you?
Both. What you think it would just be me?
I mean,
they took one look at me and they were like, "No, dude, you do not fit the bill of father."
I mean, you never know.
And they might not be right. They might not be wrong. It was both of us, and we actually had the same evaluator talk to both of us, who now kind of conveniently is also our arbitrator in case anything does come up down the line.
Did you have to have an arbitrator named in your documents?
We did have to have. So we agreed in a very long document, legally binding for the most part, that we do not want conflicts to end up in litigation and in the courts. We want conflict to be resolved by a third party that we both liked. And we both really liked our psych evaluator, I think because she passed us both. So we both liked her.
That's good.
And we were like, okay, she's on my side. And Ashley was like, yeah, she was on my side too.
She sounds like a perfect arbitrator.
So if we ever come to any sort of conflict down the road, she's going to be our first line. And I think I don't think it's going to get to that, but it's nice knowing she's in our back pocket.
Yeah, and I'm glad you won't be coming to me with your conflicts down the line.
Ooh, I forgot. Maybe you should have been our arbitrator.
Okay, all right. So, so you had to decide whether you were going to be in, meaning you wanted to have parental rights, 50-50, or as much as as much up to 50% parental rights as Ashley, or out, which is Ashley gets full rights and you get whatever she wants to give you. And you decided you wanted to be in, because that's how it works in California. You have to make that decision.
Yeah, that's what mom and dad said I have to do. And
because mom and dad wanted to be there hanging out with the baby.
Yeah. So,
but they didn't get to sign any legal agreements, right? So Ashley could still kick them out.
Maybe, but yeah, it's going to be tougher for her though now.
Yeah.
So,
So, what were the pros and cons of going through this very systematically?
It gave us a chance to hash out how we viewed raising a child. Like, I know how she views going to a festival, and I know how she views going to Burning Man, and I know how she views a night out in Vegas, and I know how she views living at the beach in San Diego. But I have no idea how she views raising a child. So it kind of, those two things might not go hand in hand, right? She's great at hanging out on a beach, listening to good music, but that doesn't mean she's going to be a good mom, right? Maybe I was being a bit naive by thinking those two are related, but, I guess you get a sense of someone's character. And then you go through this whole legal process where you really hash out everything. At first it was kind of like, damn, we have to go through all this. We both have to pay lawyers, and, we come to conclusions, and lawyers have to talk to each other, and they have to redraft it, and we pay more money. In the beginning, it sounded like we have to grind through this, but then it became more of a, wow, this is really good that we're going through this, because it's like before this baby even arrives, we're on the same page for what I would say is at least the top tier of important issues. And, those issues could be anywhere from vaccines to schooling to religion to custody, to residence, to motor vehicle safety, holidays, religious holidays, significant others. Where should we? Where we could just keep the. There's a lot to unpack here. International travel.
Right. So you're making me think of like premarital counseling that a lot of families do. A lot of religions kind of recommend doing it. And Tim, my husband, and I had to do it because we had two ceremonies. We had a Hindu ceremony, and then we had our Christian ceremony. And his family friend married us and made us for the Christian ceremony, and he made us go through some of this premarital counseling, and it did ask us some of these questions, but nowhere near as in depth as what you and Ashley went to. Like it didn't ask us about what religion we wanted to raise our kid. Maybe because he was Christian, he assumed we were going to raise our kids Christian. But I think those are all, super important questions to think about. And I think it's hard for most people to think about that, but I guess it's hard for most people to think about that because when they're entering a marital, like kind of the marriage contract, you're thinking about how you're going to live with this person. So a lot of it was like how Tim and I were going to problem solve. Like, if like we're both tired and no one's made dinner, what are we? It didn't. It was several steps ahead to think about, well, now you put a baby in the picture. Whereas you and Ashley are skipping all the fluff and going straight to there's a baby in the picture. And what are all the things that are really important when it comes, what are the big decisions? So you guys, was there anything you really disagreed on? Like, did Ashley want to homeschool, or did one of you was not interested in vaccinating? Like, were there any disagreements, or what were the areas that you really had to kind of talk through or muddle
Hash
through?
out? Oh, that's interesting. Surprisingly, there were probably fewer disagreements than I would have imagined. For instance, vaccines. Our legally binding document names you, I believe, as our go-to on vaccines, since I don't trust what's going on with our current administration and, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah, I did notice that I was named in the document as the vaccine
Czar, the vaccine czar.
The vaccine czar. Please don't name me that. But yeah, so those are things that you guys talked about early on before the baby was even implanted. So, okay, so you go through your psychological evaluation. You have to come up with this legal document after you've both lawyered up. What else did you have to go through before you actually got to the clinic?
In this, like going through the legal grunt work, we had to talk about conflict resolution, schooling, religion. You're named in there again, by the way, as you and Tim are the godparents. Whether you like it or not.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, of course we would be there if anything happened. But I imagine that must have been a hard decision to come to, because Ashley's got two siblings and they both have kids. We do live closer to you guys, or to where Ashley lives and where you're planning on raising the baby for the time being, at least, is an hour away from us, versus her siblings live several hours away. And
both of her brothers are great, and her brother's kids are great, and her sister-in-laws are all great, and you and Tim are great. So this was a good problem for us to have, right? Where does the kid go? I think any of those three options would have been fine. But once Ashley met you in person and got to meet the kids and your husband, I think it was she came on board to my suggestion of, let's just make it my sister and her husband.
She knows she'll get our mom and dad in the package too.
Yes. Yeah. That was really what tipped her.
Okay. So then, were you ready?
So were we ready then? No, we were still discussing. No, so we passed our psychological evaluations. We hashed out all these details regarding custody, residence, motor vehicle safety. Like is this kid going to be allowed to drive ride an electric scooter, right? Holidays.
Did you really have to do that, or did you just want to do that? Because
a lot of this is want to do. And a lot of it, some of it may or may not be legally binding, but at least it's a starting point for if we do have a conflict and we do go to an arbitrator, that the arbitrator could be like, hey, you did agree to this. Like, people can change their minds.
Let's give our listeners a little bit of background. Why do you care so much about what car seat the kid is going to be in, whether the kid rides an electric scooter or what kind of motor vehicle, what kind of car the kid gets to ride in? Why does this matter to you?
Oh, just, standard hyper paranoia. I mean, is there anything else? Look, I'm all about enjoying your life. I think you know that very firsthand. I'm out snowboarding, out in trees on steep terrain, and I participated in a lot of dangerous activities throughout my life. But if you can't control,
we'll do an
something,
episode on that too.
Yeah, for sure. Raman's dangerous activities. Sounds perfect. Sounds fantastic. But when I am doing these activities, if I can afford it, I'm going to go buy the best helmet out there. Why not? Right? So if we can afford the safest car out there, or the safest electric scooter, if that makes any sense at all, we should do it, right? I'm all about saving money where you should, but I'm also about being a realist. What's a high likelihood of injury or death? I mean, it seems like car safety would be up there.
Yeah, I think we also need to just let our listeners know that you run a tour company, and so you look at transportation a little differently and in a little more detail, I think, than the average consumer of transportation.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we require all our any passengers that are bringing toddlers or infants, or that don't meet the state requirements to be in their own seat. We require them to be in a car seat, and we provide it free of charge.
That's great.
So yeah, this stuff is important to me, and I don't think it takes too much mental bandwidth to make it happen. So why not just do it?
All right, so you've done the agreement, you've done the psychological evaluations. Do you get to the clinic?
Well, yeah. So the clinic happened in there at some point in early January. In the clinic, actually, I was able to give my sample while this stuff was going on at the same time. So I actually got to the clinic, and they were able to hold on to it and save it until all the dots and all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. So that was in December, end of December. And then I went and moved to Colorado for winter season.
Of course.
Yeah. And, it was there that I was told that, my sample could be better. And so
we'll get into that.
We can get into that later as well. And we can get into why my sample could have been better. It has to do with nicotine and vaping for anyone who cares.
What happens when you go to an IVF clinic when you're a dude?
Okay. You walk in. You look around, you try to act casual and cool and just laid back, and like you kind of trying to act like you belong there. And this is cool. This is normal. And then you make eye contact with all the women one by one who are either sitting because they're patients, or they're working there. And you're all just like, God, does everyone know what I'm about to do here? This is so just, I guess the drive to the clinic I believe I drove from your house to San Diego. I remember just thinking, what have I done in my life that has led me to be driving to a fertility clinic right now? I'm going to go spend some time in isolation in a room. It's like, is this really happening? This is like everything I've done in my life has led to this moment in time. Like, did I make the right choices? It was another time to reflect again. But, I got into the clinic, and everyone was very friendly, and, I filled out my social security, my name. They made sure they double checked multiple IDs, made sure it was me. And, a woman led me to a room, and she opened the door, and she's like, let us know when you're done. And I kind of like just stood there, and she kind of looked at me at the door, and I was like, so do I just shut the door? And she was like, yeah. You shut the door. And I was like, do I lock it? And she was like, yeah, you don't want anyone coming in on you, do you? I was like, okay, I'm just I don't know how this works. You do this every day. Like, I just wonder, I don't know if there was like a medical accident. You don't want the door to be locked. I don't know. I don't know what kind of accident could happen, but anyways, so let's not harp on that too long. And that was done. And so yeah, it was the sample, it was the psych evals, it was all the legal work.
What about financially?
Financially, oh gosh, we scored. Ashley's company financed the whole thing. So Ashley's company that she works for, I'm not going to plug them. They paid for her egg harvesting, and they paid for, I think, ended up being the vast majority of this whole IVF process. And they're going to give the child really good healthcare too.
Oh, well, maybe we should plug them on a later episode when we have Ashley on. Anything that happened between the yes and the implantation that we should...
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I forgot to mention that we had to get a full blood work panel to make sure we didn't have like STDs or just any other disease that could be potentially spread to a new embryo. So now, okay, so we've gotten genetic testing out of the way. We've gotten blood testing out of the way. So now they create the embryos. And that was a whole process where once they end up with the embryos that were formed, they have a grading scale. Are you aware of all that stuff?
You can tell us a little bit about the grading scale.
Yeah, so embryos are graded just like you're graded in school. You're like an A student, a B student, a C student, a D student, and it makes it easy, right? They're like, okay, so first of all the embryos that were created were male. Out of all the ones that could be used, all boys. So there is going to be no gender reveal party. and we obviously know right off the bat what we're going to get. And from there, it was easy because a few of the embryos were graded like AAA, a few were graded triple B or double B, and then there was like a C student in there too. And I told Dr. Park, I was like, there's nothing wrong with a C student. So we'll take whichever one works, but we can start with the A's.
To which I'm sure Dr. Park laughed and said, yes.
Yeah. So it was pretty easy deciding which embryo to pick.
And then after that, it was just the timing with Ashley and Dr. Park to see when they were going to implant the embryo.
Exactly. I think some other kind of interesting things that people might want to know about were like this child is going to be living with Ashley full time in her home under her roof, and that sits fine with me. Obviously, I'm going to be there fully to support her, or if there's sleepless nights, I will. She can ring me up, and I'm gonna get a place in San Diego. I will be local. And I'm going to be there to support this child and the well-being of the child. So, I think that was kind of an interesting topic to kind of talk through. And in the legal agreement, it says when the child is of age. I don't know what that really means, but once he's not breastfeeding anymore or he's just older, at that point, I can choose to have the kid live with me 50% of the time. So it comes back to what Bobby said. If that's what I want to do, I'll be doing what I want to do. Or maybe I still will be there 50% of the time, but the kid is just so comfortable living at Ashley's and it's working out just fine. But we'll just cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, and for our listeners, Bobby is one of Raman's oldest friends. He's known him for 35-ish years, and he's also one of my oldest friends because and he was an unexpected source of wisdom. I shouldn't, maybe I should say he was a very expected source of wisdom.
Yeah,
but he was he was a source of wisdom and guidance for Raman through this process. So thanks, Bobby. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And I think it is so wise because Bobby's words were, why don't you recap for us what Bobby's guidance was when you were deciding whether or not to move forward with this IVF decision?
Yeah, he basically kind of put my mind at ease and said, hey, you're not going to make, there's no wrong decision in this process, whether you choose to have the kid or not. He's like, you love your life and the way you're living it. And if you choose not to have the baby, you'll continue to do that and be happy. But if you have the kid and you end up wanting to spend all your time with the kid and doing that, then you will do it and you'll still end up doing what you want to do. Or you'll find that there is a balance where you get to still do what you want to do because Ashley's kind of taking the helm on all this, and you still get to go on your 2 or 3 week or month-long excursions, but you're still come back and be a dedicated dad. And you're either way, however it pans out, you're going to end up getting to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention for anyone out there listening to this, because they were, again, we're thinking about having a platonic relationship child, is other things that we had to consider were what would happen if one of our jobs moved, or if one of us needed to move, right? What if one of our parents got sick, like, and Ashley needed to move to Vegas? It's all stuff that's worth important stuff to hash out in the beginning if you can. All right, Angel. So I've been going on and on and on and on and on about all this stuff I've had to do leading up to putting my sample in a cup. But how do you see things from a medical perspective?
Yeah, I actually find this to be super refreshing to hear. I agree with you that these are things that a lot of parents don't consider. And I see a lot of conflict in parenting around decisions like vaccines, schooling. I see a lot of contempt among parents when they disagree on subjects. And so I'll see eye rolling in the clinic when one parent is arguing against vaccinating, or when one parent is bringing up that they're now going to homeschool the child. And when you see eye rolling, that's never a good indicator for the health of that relationship, which is then not a good indicator for the child's upbringing by those parents. So I think hashing out all of this ahead of time is at least a little bit preemptive. Like, let's not think that you guys are, foreseeing everything, because that's why we call the show The Unplanned Parent, because despite all your planning, things are going to come up. But you guys have talked about a lot of things. And I think the other thing that is kind of helpful that you're probably not even realizing is that you're in your mid-40s and you've already seen a lot. A lot of your friends have had kids. You've just seen a lot of life happen. And you're at a stage in life that's different than parents who are in their 20s or even in their 30s. So you guys have a lot going for you on that side. I think some conversations that you will have to have later in life, or you may want to think about as the kid gets older, and we'll definitely come back to this, is like, when do you tell the kid about how the kid was conceived and why your lifestyle is the way it is. And I would say if anyone's out there in that situation, I would say the earlier you tell the child, the better, because then it normalizes that situation. I recently had 2 male dads, and the kids were, one child was genetically like one dad and one child was genetically like another dad. And the kids were they were school age, like 4th, 5th grade. And I really urged them to tell the kids as soon as possible, because when they're younger and they learn about being adopted or being conceived in a non-traditional way, it's just kind of normal for them. But as they get older and social influences create their framework for normal, then kids think that every kid comes into the world in one way, which is usually with a mom, dad, married, baby happens. And that, because that is kind of our societal framework, for better or for worse. And then when kids learn that they were not made that way, they think of themselves as atypical. So you want your kid to grow up feeling like everything about them is the way it should be. And so we want to kind of tell them who they are before society tells them who they should be. The other medical kind of fun fact maybe that we can move into, like stuff you didn't know, I thought it was really interesting that all your embryos are male, and that's because you guys chose them probably because they picked the best sperm and they picked the best eggs, and then you guys did go through a process called intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where the doctors in the fertility clinic picked the best of you and the best sperm, the best egg, and then put them together. So that's why you guys, it just happened to be that your Ys were better, and that's why they're all male. In a conventionally conceived child, there's new science that's coming out that it's actually maternal factors that kind of choose the sperm, which I think is so fascinating.
Wow.
So you hear of, so you see these moms that have, 3 boys, or, we have an aunt that had 6 girls, right? And so it's, I think we think that, that guy is just his Y, one, either his X or his Y are faster swimmers. But it's not that. There's something on the maternal side, on the egg, that is more welcoming to the X or the Y. So I think the science is pretty new on that, but I think that's kind of fascinating fun fact and stuff you didn't know.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What is that appropriate age? You mentioned tell a kid as early as possible. I'm assuming there's a window that you have in mind.
I would say whatever age the kid asks, or might, like, you could tell a 3-year-old, you always give answers that are age appropriate. And so if a 3-year-old asks, if a 3-year-old has 2 male parents and says, "Where's my mommy?" you can just say, "Oh, you have 2 daddies instead of a mommy." And the kid is probably satisfied with that. Now you have a 10-year-old and they might say, "How did this happen? Because I just learned in school, or I learned that, mating happens when you have a sperm and an egg. That's how a dog mates or something." And so then you answer the question at the age appropriate level of the child. So I would say it's never too early. You just have to use the right words, and you could talk to someone like your pediatrician, or a therapist, like, who could help you with the wording. But really, it's just you give the simplest answer and see what questions the child has, rather than try to muddle your way through over explaining something, because the child has probably lost interest.
Got it. Thank you for that.
So should we go into our "This is Normal" segment? Is this normal segment?
Is any of this normal?
So yeah,
what is normal?
No, none of what you are doing is what I would say is typical. But just because it's atypical doesn't mean it's wrong. And
by normal, you mean typical?
Yeah. By normal, I mean typical. And so I don't like using the word normal. We should say it's just not how typically people have babies. And hey, like, you said you finally got to this yes answer, and it took you less time to come up with your yes answer for Ashley than it took Tim and me. Tim is my husband. It took Tim and me over a year to decide to have a 3rd child. And I think that is okay. We thought through it. It was going to change our life. As I mentioned on our last episode, we literally asked a bartender to weigh in on the decision. And I think, I am a little bit embarrassed to say, but hey, that's what we do on this podcast. We talk about stuff that is sometimes a little embarrassing or sometimes considered taboo. But I kind of went into my first kid and even my second kid because that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to get married and have kids. And my 3rd kid, I thought about a lot more because that was like our bonus kid. And Tim and I, my husband Tim and I, we refer to her still sometimes as our bonus baby, because we looked at everything with her as an adventure because we chose her, which is kind of like, it's such a small thing, but it totally changed the way we enjoyed her, especially those early, we still enjoy her so much, but especially those early several months where it's really hard because you're up at night and you're exhausted and you're like, why am I waking up at night to feed this baby? Why did I make this decision? And Tim would say to me, it's okay. She's our bonus baby. This is our adventure. We're looking at this like an adventure. And it was so different than our first two, who we were like, we got to just get through this because we're supposed to have kids. And, so I think for you and Ashley, you're going to look at this as your adventure right from the beginning. And that's such a lovely thing, not just for you guys, but also for that baby, because the baby feels it. Babies feel the emotions of parents. And that's why moms who are anxious during pregnancy or after birth, and same with dads, like the babies can feel that. And there's even studies on babies' brain waves and heart rate variability, baby's heart rate variability that changes based on the parents in the room and their level of stress. So I think you and Ashley are off to an atypical but a fantastic start.
Right on. Well, that gives me some encouragement.
And now it's time for stuff you didn't know.
So through this process, Angel, there are so many things I did not know, like when it comes to the grading of embryos, or even things like, what is everyone thinking about me as I walk into that fertility clinic? Is there anything you didn't know? And if not, we can add that to our stuff you didn't know segment.
Yeah. So I was surprised at how detailed your legal document was. And now I get that yours was a little bit more detailed because you're super into transportation safety. So I think some information that a lot of parents might not know is car safety information that they can get from certain websites, which will be in our show notes. But the nhtsa.gov site or the iihs.org site both have car safety information, crash test information. The first one is the National Highway site, is a government site, and the second one, the iihs.org site, is supported by insurance companies. So, using both of that information, you'll probably be able to find a car that is safe and meets your financial needs. And on the car seat side, I also think parents may not know that there are state laws for how children need to be restrained are often more lenient than what the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends. So we'll also put that link in our show notes to check out what the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends. For example, children shouldn't sit in the front seat until they are 13. Now, I think California law says you can sit in the front seat when you're 8. And the reason that my 13-year-old only got to sit in the front seat once she turned 13, and my 12-year-old is still in the back seat, much to his chagrin, is because if that airbag deploys, it's not good on a little head and neck. So, similarly, if you have kids in the back seat, the laws might be like, 4 years and 40 pounds till they're out of the booster. But you really want to keep your kid in a booster, and especially a booster with a back, as long as they can safely fit in that seat. And usually there's a sticker on the side that tells you how much the maximum weight and the maximum height that a child can have. And then you'd have to transition them out of that seat. But if you can keep your kid in a car seat that has a 5-point harness restraining system until they outgrow that particular car seat, that is the safest option for your kid. And I know that's very different for people like me that grew up without car seats and sitting in the front seat when we were really little and sitting on people's laps, but just don't. It's so easy to prevent injuries if you're properly restrained. So do that for yourself, do that for your kids. And when people get in your car, don't start driving until everybody's buckled up. You can say, Dr. Angel said so. With that, I think we can end today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you, Raman, for being my co-host.
Thank you.
So if you found this episode helpful or even just a little bit interesting, we'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review the show. I know it sounds like a small thing, but it genuinely makes a huge difference in helping other parents or people planning to become parents find us. And honestly, while you're at it, please do the same for other shows you like. It makes a big difference for all of us trying to put out good research-backed content in a sea of noise. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.